Well, thank you for making the long drive over from over there. I mean, I know it was an inconvenient, but we were happy to have this location so that we could put all of our oil seeds on a cereal stubble. So that's the reason why we're breaking it up. And I'd like to thank Laverne there. He's stuffing a donut in his face over there. This is, I think it's his land, or he rents it at least, and he's been very accommodating for us to be able to have the research sites out here. And it's great to have, like you said, the opportunity to be out here in a completely different environment than the Lethbridge area for sure. So I'd like to introduce Autumn Barnes, just about said home saltsman. She is the local Southern Region Canola Council agronomist, and she's going to be talking about our ultimate canola challenge trials that we have. For us, we have one in Lethbridge and one here. Unfortunately, that big chunk of rain that we had, and this being a new site that we didn't really maybe scope it out in a wet enough year, you can kind of see there that we had some flooding issues. But we're showing you the prettiest part of the plot anyway, so that doesn't matter, right? Anyways, I'm going to pass it off to Autumn.
Okay, thanks, Ken. So I guess before I get started, I guess I should start with who's the Canola Council of Canada. I know since I started, it seems like a lot of people get all of the canola groups a little bit mixed up. So generally, to the farmers out there, when you pay your check off, if you're in Alberta, your check off dollar goes to the Alberta Canola Producers Commission. Alberta Canola Producers Commission works on provincial research, and they represent growers sort of on a provincial level. They give part of that check off dollar to the Canola Council of Canada, who I work for. We're an umbrella organization over Canada. We mostly work in Prairie Canada. That's where most of the canola is grown in the country. There's 8 of us agronomists, 4 in Alberta, 3 in Saskatchewan, and 1 in Manitoba. And we provide agronomic support on the ground. We do a lot of, help out with research trials and work with industry and growers. And then in our head office in Winnipeg, we do a lot with market development, market access, and we also have people in Ottawa working on policy. And then because there weren't enough canola associations, there's also the Canadian Canola Growers Association, or the CCGA. They're also based in Winnipeg, and if you've ever done the cash advance program, that's who monitors it or who works on it, and they also do get involved with some policy work. So I guess if you take 3 things away from this today, one of them will be who the organizations are and who we all work for. So I work for the Canola Council of Canada. We do all sorts of things. We have Canola Watch. If anybody here is not subscribed, it's a weekly e-newsletter. It's free in the growing season. Gives you sort of a list of heads-up topics, what you should be thinking about, problems you could be managing this week. And it's actually, it won awards before I started. It's a pretty great organization, a pretty great tool. So the plots here that we're looking at are from the Ultimate Canola Challenge, and maybe just put up your hand. I think a few of you guys have seen these before. So if you've seen them before, put your hand up. A couple of you guys, okay. So Ultimate Canola Challenge, basically we're brought about to see if there's anything that we can do to improve upon our best management practices. So we know, through countless years of research that you want to start with a plant stand of 7 to 10 plants per square foot. You want to start with a field that's clean from weeds. We know that we want to scout regularly and manage diseases or insects accordingly. And we know that we want to make sure that the crop has enough of a background level of nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur are the big 3 ones for canola. So what we did with this trial was for our check treatment, we gave it the groceries. We basically said we took soil samples and we gave this crop exactly what it needed to grow whatever the yield target was for the specific site. So we're here at Medicine Hat. There's a site at Lethbridge, and there are 5 other sites in Alberta. I think we lost a few this year from various reasons. So in total in the prairies, there's 9 this year. Last year in total, at the end of the year, we had 9 sites as well. These plots are replicated 4 times, so the data that comes out of them is really strong. It's statistically valid. If anybody really wants to talk statistics with me after this, they can come over and hassle me. I don't remember much from university physics or statistics, but I can definitely hold a conversation if you do want. But we wanted to see if there were any products that we could add on top of doing everything right that will give us that extra yield bump. So that's sort of the Ultimate Canola Challenge. So we have 13 13 treatments here, and then on top of that there was sort of a wild card treatment. So the research organizations that we're working for, like Farming Smarter, some of the other ARAs, and some of the, who else? The AFC at Lacombe has a site as well. So some of the provincial ag organizations or groups have sites, and they were given a 14th treatment as, you know, a wild card. They could do whatever they want. So I think at the Lethbridge site, Ken was talking about going in and putting UAN on every week or something. So you could have some fun with it, and if you thought of a new product or a new idea, a new management technique, you could try that on that extra treatment and see if there was some results. So our check treatment here is the standard seeding rate with everything it needed for nutrition. So from the soil test, they consulted Murray Hartman and Dan Orchard, who's our resident Canola Council of Fertility expert. And our standard check got 20 pounds of actual phos with a seed, 70 pounds or 75 pounds of nitrogen side banded, and 15 pounds of sulfur. So it got this seeded at 100 seeds per meter squared. On small plot research, we generally expect emergence in that, what, Ken, like 80% range? 70, 80. So that brings us 7-8 plants per square foot, which, you know, our ideal plant density is 7 to 10 plants per square foot. We thought that 7 to 8 is pretty realistic for what most farmers are doing on their farm. So we can take a little walk through the plots. You can see if you see any difference. As Ken mentioned, there were some issues with the site. So this rep here is the best rep. So we'll just concentrate on this first rep here and see if you can see any differences. It's pretty tough, and last year when we got our data, it was pretty tough as well to see, you know, some of the plots looked like they might have been a little bit better. The extra nitrogen plots generally looked like they were going to be a little better. At emergence, the extra seed plots were a little bit better. But at the end of the day, last year in our data set, through all of our sites, we weren't able to find something that could improve upon doing everything right the first time. So I guess I ruined the end for you, but we'll start here and we'll work our way down. So this was our standard check plot right there. And then moving on, we've got 125% N, so 25% extra N at seeding. And you can sort of see, last year we saw some of them looked a little better. In Medicine Hat last year, we had the extra N plots were statistically higher of a yield. This was a seed primer, and we had a couple seed primers in the trial because generally we get a lot of questions about seed primers and their efficacy, and should I invest the extra few bucks and put it on or not. Again, we didn't see a yield response last year, but this year could be different. That's why we wanted to make sure we had another year of data and all of our plots are replicated. This was a stress relief product that went on at herbicide timing. A few of our sites last year got hailed on, so we were pretty excited to see how this one worked, and unfortunately we didn't see a statistical yield increase with it last year, so we'll see what happens this year. Some of the sites are a little bit stressed out, so maybe we will see something this year. And feel free to interrupt me as we go. If you guys have any questions at all or questions about the plots, then I'm happy to answer them. Or if you just have random canola questions, you can throw them at me too. So this one was top dressed UAN. And then this one last year actually would have been another one where it would have been good to see some sort of result. This was a boron at flowering, and we always get questions about this boron at flowering. There were a couple greenhouse studies that got done. I've seen the data from Ontario where boron at flowering could sometimes increase yield in canola and sort of protect that plant from heat stress. And unfortunately, through many studies that have been done in Alberta, in southern Alberta, in Alberta and in the prairies, we haven't been able to see a consistent response from boron at flowering. So you know, it's been really hot at flowering this year. I don't know if any of you guys have tried boron at flowering this year. If you have, maybe put your hand up. No? Well, if you did, hopefully you left a check strip, because it would be neat to see how it works or it doesn't work. Like I said, So far, the bulk of the scientific evidence suggests that probably doesn't, but you never know. This one was one of the better treatments last year throughout most of the sites. This was the higher seeding rate, so 150 seeds per meter squared as opposed to 100 seeds per meter squared. So if we're getting 70% emergence, that would put us at just over 10 plants per square foot. Is that right? That is right.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think there's actually quite a visual difference of this plot right now, especially compared to the 75% end beside you.
Yeah.
Look at the flowering in the pods.
Yeah.
So there's a maturity influence of the seeding rate, I think.
And that was something we saw at Lethbridge too with the nitrogen treatments. It seemed like the ones that were a little bit higher in nitrogen seemed to look a little bit better and a little bit more uniform too. So we've got a cut rate of nitrogen at seeding. This is another seed primer. And when you guys came out and did your plant counts in the springtime, I think, Mike, you had said that they were about the same.
What do you mean by about the same?
Like between the treatments?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think.
All except 150.
Yeah, except for that one.
That one was really obvious.
Yeah, that's a good illustration, I guess. So this was a biostimulator type product, and all these products were sort of things we've been asked about over the years. And as our fertilizer registration system has changed, there's not a ton of efficacy data out there, or I guess there's not a ton of independent efficacy data out there for some of these new fertility products that are coming out. So some of these we just picked to get some independent data and to be able to answer questions as we got them about them. So this was a fortified foliar product. It was a micronutrient blend that went on at 5 leaf. It's tough to see any visual differences now, I guess, with exception to a couple of the fertility ones and the seeding rate. But we will be analyzing all this data and running the stats on it next year. This is another boron at 4 to 6 leaf. Once again, there was another one we didn't see results on last year. This is sort of an interesting product. The theory behind it is that if you apply it to the plant, that it opens up the stomata in the leaves and it makes the plant able to take up more CO2, and so it can potentially have a huge yield increase apparently, and last year we didn't see anything. But that's really one of the reasons we wanted to make sure we had another year of data. We had 9 site years last year. All of the sites were replicated, but you know, last year was an interesting year. We're not really sure what a normal year is right now, and so when you're looking at data and trying to decide on new products, it's really important to ask questions like, where was this tested? Who tested it? How many years of data do we have? Like, is it a strip trial next door that your neighbor did 1 year where he did a strip with and a strip without? Or is this something that's been going on for multiple years? Because, you know, even within a small plot, there's tons of variability. And it's really important to be thinking critically when you're assessing new products, because, you know, $5 an acre might not seem like much, but it can certainly add up over the acres. So, and then this would be the end of it, because I don't think you guys had a wild card at this site, right?
Not here, just in Lethbridge.
Just in Lethbridge, yeah.
UAN in the spring.
Yeah, great. Yeah, so this is the UCC project. If you guys have any questions about it, then feel free to shout it out. Yeah.
Are you doing any work with products like a pod stick, something that's marketed as Iske in the UK, where they apply when they desiccate it so that the pods are stuck closed, so when they straight combine it, there's less or no shattering?
Currently, no. The data that I read on that sort of indicated that it was a bit of a wash, if it was effective or not. And any of the data I've seen, and in talking to Marie Hartman, who's our oilseed specialist in Alberta, and some colleagues who've been at this a lot longer than I have, they haven't seen any consistent results from using like a pod stick or pod seal or something like that. So it's not something I would feel comfortable recommending right now. And from what I understand from the amount of research that's been done, it doesn't need to be, from the products that were tested as they were, it doesn't need to be done again. There are some new varieties that are coming out that are more shatter tolerant, but genetic gains are pretty significant and hard to make sometimes. So we'll see how it goes. There's definitely a lot more interest in straight cutting these days. So I think it's an area where we'll have to go, but I think from what I've heard, there's a lot more interest in the genetic improvements than the spray-on fixes, if that makes sense. Yeah. And I think an important factor for straight cutting as well is that you pick a field that is really suitable for straight cutting. So if you have a really thin field where the canopy is sort of loose and when it gets windy it'll bash together, you're probably going to have more shelling. So a good candidate for straight cutting would be a field that's like really dense and knit together and can sort of lean a little bit together. So if you have a poor canopy to begin with in a field that's a poor candidate for straight cutting, I would be very doubtful that a Band-Aid product could fix that and make it a good canopy or a good candidate. So yeah, starting I guess with a good establishment and a good plant stand would be my way to spend that extra cash if it was my field. So
how much boron was applied on the boron trials?
The 4 to 6 leaf was 0.75 liters per acre, and the flowering one was applied at 1 liter per acre. Yeah. And last year, I haven't seen all the soil tests for our sites this year, but last year we did have a couple fields that tested as low for boron, although it seems like none of the labs or provinces really agree what low is. Exactly, yeah. And I know in talking to Ross McKenzie, who did tons of boron work back before I was in the industry and even recently until he retired, he wasn't able to find a response to boron even in levels as low as 0.3 parts per million or soil residual levels. So it's something that people want to try every year, and it's something people do try every year. But from the replicated data and from the scientific data, there's not evidence to show that it's something worth spending your money on unless you are actually deficient. Like if you're at 0.2 or 0.1, then maybe it's something worth considering.
Right.
Yeah, but
Taking a tissue sample in season, I guess, and then figuring out if you're deficient from that too would be beneficial.
yeah, I don't know. I think soil tests probably have a bit more of I think soil tests are generally a little more reliable when it comes to crop nutrition than tissue tests, if a grower has time to do that before seeding. So they have an idea of what's actually in the soil profile, because for different reasons the plant could be taking up more or less than, it's not always an accurate portrayal of what's in the ground. And
like
it's
a blood test, basically.
Yeah, and it's like an instant look at what's there. Yeah, so it's sort of a tough one, but good question. Yeah.
The stomata opening chemical.
Yeah.
What's what's it called? When's it applied? And how long is it? How long is it effective?
This is in no way a plug, an endorsement, or a bash of the product. Just FYI. It's called AgriSolution. I can give you the link to their website if you want. I can send it to you. It is applied twice, so once at the 2 to 4 leaf stage, and then 2 weeks later again.
And if it doesn't work, you didn't apply it enough.
Yeah, it's there. Honestly, there wasn't a ton of there wasn't a ton of data available on that product. There wasn't really much data available at all on the product. It was just a nice sort of shiny brochure that made a few claims to yield, and a couple of our agronomists and one of the researchers up at Lacombe had been asked about it, and we looked for data and we couldn't find any, so we thought we might as well throw it in when we were figuring out our treatments last year. It was an interesting project figuring out treatments last year, because we get asked about so many different ones, and there's so many different claims, and some of them I'm sure are totally valid, and some of them maybe work in like Brazil on soybeans, or like it's so hard to pick what's going to work, and some things seem more likely than others. And Murray Hartman's got a great spiel that I could probably never come close to about but what could probably work. So if you think something's going to have, around a 50% chance of working, is that enough of a likelihood of it working for you to spend your money on? Or do you need something closer to like 75, 80% likelihood for you to spend your money on? And if it's only got a chance, like 25% chance of it working, then why bother, right?
Well, it's an interesting product, right? Because, I mean, forcing the stomata open, like I get they're trying to let CO2 in, but it also lets a lot of water out. Right? So generally when it gets dry, you see a plant, the stomata will close, basically to keep the water in so it can still actually survive.
Yeah.
So I just find it fascinating.
And that'll be a really good question, actually, when we look at data at the end of this year, because last year we were mostly wet. But this year it'll be interesting to see if there are any yield effects, or if it actually, like we weren't picking leaves and testing them to see if the stomata were opened at any different rate. So it wasn't anything like that, but it would be interesting to see in some of our drier sites this year if the plant suffered maybe a little bit. But yeah, like when we ran the stats on all of these plots, there were 9 sites last year, and then we'll have another 9 sites of data this year. And, there was nothing that was a statistical difference. There were a couple things that looked a little higher and a little bit lower for yield, but when you ran the stats on them, it was not something that's repeatable. So, and even our nitrogen treatments, which actually is a testament to those who are picking our nitrogen rates and our fertility rates, was that extra bit was not necessarily enough. Although an extra 25% is sort of negligible in a lot of cases, especially on research plots where our background levels are often really high. So yeah, it's been a fun project to work on. I'm not sure if we're going to carry it on next year or not. If we'll try new products or, how we're going to do this. But if you guys have any suggestions, feel free to come find me. I'll be here for a little bit, and then I've got to drive up to Stony Plain today. So yeah, feel free to track me down. I think my time's probably up.
Yeah, you're up.
Okay.
Tell Jamie to stop asking questions.
So
Just
thanks,
kidding, buddy.
guys.
Join me in thanking Autumn.